Thursday morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. You know, this week we saw the story of 3 children who rejected their journalist mother despite her winning a court case, a court custody case. And, you know, they didn't want to go with her. They wanted to remain with the father. And it got me thinking about just how we have issues in marriages, yes, but when we have children, how do we shield our children from our issues as husband and wife so that our children are not caught in between our domains, as we like calling them, our fights, our disagreements, our irreconcilable differences? We give them many names. How do we shield our children and protect them from being caught in the mix of all that? In studio with me today, Christabel Ndanu, counseling psychologist from Amani, right?
Yes.
Karibu Sana Studio. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Today you get to work from my office, not from home.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, what happens for things to get this bad?
Okay.
Yeah. How do we get here?
A sad story indeed.
Yeah.
Worrying. It looks like, many times we have conflicts in marriage and disagreements, and we leave issues unresolved. Okay. We hope they'll go away. We put them under the carpet.
Okay.
And so with time, they just build up, one thing after the other. And so it gets to a point where we are bursting. And so we can't control ourselves. We forget we are the adults.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we throw words at each other, and children are watching because we are models to them. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever we model is what they take in.
Yes.
I always say children are like a sponge. Okay, they suck it in, they take it, okay, and that becomes them in adults. So it becomes a whole cycle.
Okay.
So for me, this story, it depicts collapse of a family system, like dysfunctionality.
Yeah.
Where perhaps they've had conflicts in the marriage, disagreements, and they've just left things unresolved. And so over the period of time, things have gotten to where they are.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because this week on the devotional hour, the first hour of this show, we are handling the topic of forgiveness. And one of the things the pastor told us is tolerating each other is not forgiveness. And he told us even justice is not forgiveness. And I think this story brings out these 2 points very clearly, because you're saying sometimes in marriage we sweep things under the carpet, but we haven't dealt with them.
We haven't
forgiven one another. Carpet ikijaa, we will trip.
Yes.
We will trip over that mountain, and it causes havoc. I'm just
Yes.
wondering, should couples ever get to a place where they discuss this is how we will have conflicts? Because conflicts must come in relationships.
Yes.
So anytime we have a conflict, this is how we handle it, this is how we conduct ourselves. Is it important?
Yeah, it's very important. Conflicts in any relationship, they're inevitable.
Yeah.
Because remember, when you're relating, you're coming from a different place. You have your own values, you have your own belief systems, especially in marriage, where you find that 2 people meet and you're coming into the marriage with your own baggage,
Yes.
with your own experiences.
Yes.
You are bound to disagree at some point. You are bound to have some conflict of sorts. But what happens with that conflict is what determines how you push forward. Yeah? So conflicts can also be an opportunity for growth, depending on how you look at it.
Okay.
Because then out of that conflict, you can grow. You can find better ways of doing things. Yeah. So perhaps maybe I would want to look at some of the things that cause these conflicts in marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
You find that, as I was talking about, just when I was talking about the baggage that we come into the marriage together, sometimes we don't discuss issues. We focus on the wedding. We forget the marriage. When we get in there, things become a bit tough. We start thinking, is this so and so? I didn't think this. We are working on some assumptions.
Yeah.
So we find matters to do with financial issues sometimes do bring conflicts, because perhaps I'm coming into the marriage with I've invested in certain things. My spouse is not at that level. So how do we meet somewhere? How do we merge the two? You find that sometimes it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And if you don't talk about it, it becomes an imagined conflict.
Yes.
Because then it becomes my money is my money.
Yeah.
Your money is our money. And that becomes a problem,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We also find things to do with bringing up children, parenting styles. Remember, you're a product of how you grew up. So you're coming into that marriage with that being informed parenting. You've been informed from the way you grew up. Maybe you don't know any better. So when you come in there with your own values, with your own beliefs, you find that there's a clash.
Yes.
Because maybe your parent, your spouse, was thinking of perhaps this is how you should parent the children.
Yeah.
There are also issues to do with culture.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yes,
Yeah,
culture that come into play, where you find, I'm coming perhaps from a culture where this is how we should do things. This is what is expected of a woman.
Yeah.
This is what is expected of a man.
Yeah.
Men don't cry, men toughen up, all those things. And for me, I'm saying
no.
no.
And is crying all the time.
Yeah. This is a different generation.
Yes.
How do we then bring that and merge it in the marriage? Yeah, we talk about things like sometimes friendships. You find that before you got married, you had different friends, and so how do you bring these friends together?
Yes.
Is there a point where you say now this friendship perhaps is not helpful in the marriage? You know, nataka kukana wangu. Maybe you want to stay with your friends as well. How do we get to a place of compromise? So that we can be able to have a healthy relationship?
Yes.
In terms of also extended family, we have sometimes that becomes a big issue.
Yes.
And it brings conflict because perhaps you're coming from a family where there's a lot of enmeshment where everybody is in everybody's business. Okay, so when you get married, you bring that in. That is sometimes not helpful in the marriage.
Yes.
Yeah. So such things always bring conflicts in marriage. And so when we don't talk about those issues, they can become mountains.
Is it important for us to even begin having conversations about these issues before the wedding? Once we got into that place where he proposed, she said yes, now we are working towards a marriage, is it important to begin to talk about some of these things? Because sometimes I find a lot of couples who are looking towards marriage, when they go out for coffee, they don't begin talking about, so in your culture, what do you do about this?
Exactly, yes.
So in your house, who handles the money? They don't talk about that. They just talk about things up here in the air. So is it important for them to begin these conversations early?
Yeah, I think it's important, and there's a place for that in premarital counseling, where you can actually go and seek some counsel and, discuss issues.
Yeah.
Okay? I know many times when people are courting, love is in the air. We don't want to talk about something that might hurt the other person. It's all, but I believe that if some of these issues were tackled or were spoken before the marriage, then you would get into the marriage in an informed way. Sometimes, like things to do with culture, you come and find some practices that you were never brought up with those things, and you're like, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
But if you knew, then you would be better prepared psychologically to say, this and this is the way we will handle it. Okay, even as you come up with your own way of handling your own family issues, obviously you cannot divorce yourself from where you're coming from. Yeah, that will still come into play. So I believe couples who are intending to get married need to seek premarital counseling so that they can be able to just talk about real issues. Talk about real issues. Talk about, because I'm coming into that marriage. Sometimes we find that maybe people get into marriage to be completed. Okay, I come in there so that I can tick a box. Society expects me by this time I should be married. And so you get in there just saying, wherever, you don't know. So I think it's not about ticking a box, but it's to purpose to know, why am I getting into this marriage? Is it the right time for me? Then you can be able to talk about some of these things. One of the things I've seen, especially like to do with also careers, you find that maybe I've always had a dream to do my master's out of the country, but I've just kept it under wraps. When you get married, you start saying, you know what, I had applied for this, whatever, I need to go. And it becomes a problem.
2 days after the honeymoon.
Yes, yeah. So I think it's important for us to call it as it is and to look at real issues.
I love what you're saying. I'm just thinking, supposing you're still in that in that space where you're now preparing for the wedding, and you start talking about some of these issues, and you begin to realize, some of these things we are so different. You know, you're holding on to your cultures, and I'm thinking, you want to go out for a master's, and I'm thinking, you know, is it advisable for a couple at that time, this couple that's working towards marriage, to wait, or even to get to the place where you recognize, I don't think this may work, because sometimes, kwa sababu tumeannounce, hey, tulienda nyumbani wakaleta sijui mbuzi. You know, you feel like I'm now trapped. There's nothing I can do about it. What would you advise a young couple in that situation?
Okay. I think when we are talking about premarital counseling, it's done a bit way before the marriage, okay? So when you are able to tackle...
It should be. But nowadays,
sometimes it's like 2 weeks before.
Being a pastor, sometimes they just bring it up on you. Saturday nenda kwa kina dem. So pasi tuombe. Which
then you're thinking, you're thinking, when did you meet?
When did you meet? I have no idea. So it's like I'm supposed to endorse something that I don't have.
Exactly.
So sometimes it doesn't happen the way it ought to happen.
But I think if you realize that what you're getting into is something that perhaps you find yourself, you might not be able to cope, it's okay to just say, can we wait a bit more? It doesn't matter what preparations have been put in place, because once you get into the marriage, it's a covenant. It's a covenant. And it involves God, okay? So I think we need to honor that. We need to honor the place of marriage. So it's not something you just step in and you step out. It's a commitment. So I think it's better to break an engagement than a marriage.
What about that couple who've already crossed the line now? They're married, and how should they fight? How should we handle conflict? Because I believe there's a proper and mature way to handle a disagreement, and there's the immature way. So what are some of the tips you can give us about how to handle a conflict, especially if children are in the picture?
Okay, when you're already married and you find that you know, there's a conflict, I think respect is key. Respecting one another is key. Okay, everybody who is involved in the conflict is coming from a place. They are coming from a different mindset. There's something that has informed their way of thinking to get to that conflict, right? So I think it's important for us to respect one another and to hear the other person, hear them out. You know, look at what is your point. What are you bringing in? You know, why do you want us to look at it this way as opposed to this other way? I mean, we also look at things like you focus on the issue. Many times you find in conflicts, especially in marriage, there's a lot of innuendos, insinuations, all right, where you find this is how this person has always been, you know, you kind of just, we are stuck in that, okay? The person will never change. Put that aside. Look at the issue, focus on the issue. Remove the person from the issue. Okay. Look at the issue. What is causing this conflict? Focus on it. Try to see, is there a way of resolving this conflict? Can we agree to disagree? Because sometimes people will have to agree to disagree, right? Also, I think another thing is also looking at when is the best time to discuss, especially where children are concerned. Do we just have outbursts every day? Because you might have disagreement based on the things that I've talked about that bring disagreements. There are things that we live with every day. So are you going to have outbursts every day in your home? Is there a time you can say, okay, fine, I don't agree with you on this one, but maybe when we take a walk later, we can talk about it. Be civil about it. And I always say it's not every situation that must take you to the battlefield, that must take you to the battleground. It's not every situation that must take you there where you have to up your tools.
Very true.
So also there's a place for praying together, where if you know, you can pray together before before you talk, and you say, you know, God, just guide us even as we discuss this thing. It's heavy on us, and we seek your guidance, you know. Other things would be I mean, just letting the other person also speak, just what I was talking about, that respect, you know, I think that's important. And we should also always know, when you're having a conflict and you're trying to resolve a conflict, what is the end? What are you looking at? What is the end game? What are we looking at? Are we looking at it, I mean, resolving the issue to better our marriage, our relationship? Or are we looking at it to bring another conflict into the picture? What is your end game? What is your end game?
You know, somebody once told me, I remember this very well, early in my marriage, that you have to recognize that every time you fight and you win the fight, both of you have lost. If she alone wins the fight, both of you have lost. Both of you have to win. You have to find a way of getting out of that conflict where both of you feel like you have won. Because when you leave the conflict and one feels like they have lost, then both of you have lost. And I think sometimes in a marriage situation, we are always out to prove that we are the right ones, especially the husbands. We are we are right. I am the man of the house, I am right. You know, and because of that, then you get to a place where your spouse feels like they can't put in a word. It really doesn't matter what they say. You know, even when you make a mistake, you justify yourself in such a way she ends up feeling like she's the one who's guilty. Or sometimes it's even vice versa. Sometimes it's the woman. You know, so in a situation like that, I'm just trying to wonder, what do you do? What do you do if your spouse is this domineering person who is always right?
And that's why we're talking about respect. Respecting one another. That is key. Okay? Because when there is respect, then you will look at the other person as, this is a person I married. This is my spouse. This is not an enemy. This is a friend. My confidant, right? And so you find that you'll be able to resolve your issues in a more amicable way. But then when there's no respect, that's when you find that there's all this who wins and who is, you know, who is better than the other. Another thing I wanted to mention is sometimes we also let, when a conflict occurs, you drag in things, conflicts from them days of 10 years ago.
19 turudi nyuma.
Yes. You bring them into this conflict. That is not helpful. And that's why I was talking about focus. Focus on the issue that you're dealing with. Bringing back those things, and that's why you need to talk about conflicts, resolve them, and move on step by step. Otherwise you end up carrying a lot of unresolved issues in your head, and so when one conflict occurs, it reminds you of the other one of Juzi, the one of last week, the one of last year, and then it just becomes impossible.
Wow. That's a lot to carry. That's a lot to carry. What talk to us a bit about, because I've seen this as well, where you get into a conflict, and then one spouse, you tell on your spouse to your kids. You know, tumekosana, but now after you've gone to work, now I'm spewing on my kids. So I'm painting a negative picture of their father or a negative picture of their mother based on the fight we had. You know, failing to recognize that maybe Gioni we will reconcile, but I've already planted something in my children's mind and heart. Talk to us a bit about that.
Okay. Parents, or you know, when you have children, remember you're a model. You're a model to these children. Whatever you model is what they take in. If children observe, they see how do you resolve a conflict? How do you communicate with one another? How do you talk to other people? And they take that in. So what I would advise parents, remember you are a model. You are a model. And always ask yourself, what am I modeling to my children? When I tell them, Dadini mbaya, and you know what? I mean, what am I teaching them? What am I teaching them? That I'm better. Mommy is better. Mommy is better than daddy. And that is not going actually to help this relationship. For you to be able to grow together with your children, moving in one direction, I think it's important for us to actually have that respect for one another, and also not involve the children in some of those things. And that's why I was talking about maybe getting a safe space where we just discuss our issues. Yes, the children can see that you have disagreed. Sometimes it happens where you find that it just happened. You know, you just found that you had said something, but then you can resolve it and talk to the children and say, you know, mommy had an outburst, you know, I wasn't happy about something, but it has nothing to do with you. We love you, because you have to reassure the children. Sometimes children take it so hard on themselves, they think they're the cause of the conflict. So it's always good for us, if they've had something that is negative, to reassure them it's not about them. We are dealing with it with daddy, you know, and that kind of thing. Well,
I think that's good. I think that's good. At what point should a couple look at themselves and figure out, maybe we need external help. Because sometimes I find where it comes to marriage, sometimes I feel like couples wait until it's too late. It's almost like if I invite somebody, it is a sign of weakness and defeat. So at what point should a couple be wise enough to recognize, hey, let's call Christabel to come in and sort this out?
Okay, all right. I think when you find yourselves getting stuck, when you have conflicts and you find that you don't really have a way out. Most of the times when you come, you're trying to resolve a conflict, you find there's a lot of shouting. Perhaps you find you just say, let's leave it.
Yeah.
Okay, you just give up. Yeah, then you're bound to have triggers. Every time you keep having triggers, one thing is triggered, it takes you back to that place. So when you find that becomes a pattern, it becomes a continuous thing, then I think it's good to seek help, to just go and talk to somebody, and the person can be able to moderate the conversation, and you see how to move forward. But both parties must be willing, must get to that point where they agree we need to seek that help. Because sometimes you might find it's the lady or the gentleman who wants to. We are not on the same page. Somebody is thinking, what is, especially as you were talking about the men, and what is the person coming to tell me, So we need to be on the same page, even as we seek, therapy or somebody to talk to. Yeah.
Is it a shameful thing to ask for help?
It's not, absolutely not. It's a strength. It's a strength because you're admitting that, yes, I want to make it better. I'm not weak, but I want to make it better. Yes, I want to improve. That's what I was talking about initially. Remember me saying that conflict can be a way of also evaluating ourselves and growth. So it's not a weakness. It's not a weakness, and I think we need to get out of that. Yes.
Well, I think that holds quite a number of people back. When you start thinking of talking to somebody, you're thinking, I expose. Especially if you have status in the community, status in the church. People see you and they think, wow. And then even you kumbe unakuwaga na shida. Kama hizi zetu watu wa reja.
But remember, the status is not, when you are having a conflict with your spouse, that status is not, it's not going to give you a solution.
Very true.
It won't give you a solution.
Very true, yes.
Okay? Yes. How people view you out there, it's not going to give you a solution. It's between you and your spouse. So you need to work it out.
Very true.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm just looking back at the story that sparked off this conversation.
Yes.
I've been asking myself, is there anybody really who has won anything in this story? Now that it was taken to court, it's out in the public domain. Did the mother win? I don't think so. Did the children win? I don't think so. Did the husband win? And I'm thinking, is it really worth it? I don't know what your thoughts are. Is it really worth it to take it to that level?
When you look at that story, I see just a tip of the iceberg. Okay. What we saw in the media is just a part of that story. Okay, we don't know how this conflict started, what has been going on in this family. We only saw the father speaking out and saying that I've been taking care of the children. The mother abandoned them. We don't know why the mother left. We don't know what circumstances led to the mother leaving. Okay, and we don't know what hurt the children have had to go through, what painful experiences they've had to go through to get to a place where they don't even want to see the mother. They don't even want anything to do with the mother. We don't know whether there are other influences out there in terms of other family relations of other people who have also been speaking to the children and steered them in a certain direction. We don't know. So nobody has won in this situation. And I feel for the children, because beyond this, then what happens? Where does that leave the children? Remember, the children will go back to school. They're interacting with their peers. There are those peers, their parents have seen this picture. Kina nani. I mean, what will that do to them in terms of their own emotions, in terms of their psychological well-being? It's really sad. It's really sad,
Wow. What would you advise couples who may be at a place where they are having conflicts, and their conflicts are already beginning to spill over to the children, and probably they're listening into this program today, what tips can you give them? What direction can you point them in?
I think it's to sit back and reflect. Okay?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good for us to go back and ask ourselves, when we met, what is it that attracted me to this person?
I like that.
Okay?
Yeah.
Go back to the basics. Sometimes when you go back to the basics, it reminds you about many things.
Yes.
It reminds you why you chose this person. It reminds you why you chose to spend the rest of your life with this person. And it brings some of those things back. Then we can start focusing back, and saying, okay, fine, this is where we find ourselves. What can we do? Talk about it.
Yes.
One of the things that actually brings these situations is where we find that we don't have a way of resolving the conflicts because communication breakdown.
Yes. People
don't talk. You assume this is what the other person is thinking. The other person assumes. So it's important for us to talk about it. Talk about it. Every opportunity you have, talk about it. Say, I feel hurt. And don't use you. Refer to what I am feeling, what that situation made me feel, okay?
Yeah.
Don't come from a place of accusing the other person. Because when we start there, we never end up anywhere.
Yes.
We don't resolve anything. But when we start by, I felt hurt when you said this and this to me. Okay, that is a safer place because then you are not attacking the other person, but you are focusing on the issue that made you feel the way you felt.
Wow.
Okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
A friend of mine keeps telling me that sometimes they have what they would consider as a stock-taking meeting as husband and wife. And the husband keeps saying that the wife sometimes asks this question, so honey, where are we at? And the husband keeps saying, it's interesting, every time she asks that question, the first thing that comes to mind is she's asking how we are doing financially. But really it's an inviting and opening statement for them to talk about where is our relationship, and they do this periodically to check on each other and to find out are there issues that are unresolved. In the last 3 weeks have I done something that has offended you, and they say this is something that helps them a lot to maintain a healthy and steady relationship. I don't know what you think about that technique.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
And you can also throw in something like date nights, where sometimes dating didn't end with the courtship, okay? Even in marriage, it's important for you to just have time alone, just to, not necessarily to resolve a conflict, but just to talk about you without the children.
Yes.
How are we? What are you thinking? In terms of your investment, in terms of things moving forward, your marriage, what are some of the things you can throw in, because with time, as you get used to one another, you need to work to keep working at this marriage, to keep it going, keep that fire burning, okay? Otherwise things just can plateau. Yes.
Wow. Looking at some of the comments coming in, I have one here that says, I'm listening into the Relationship Clinic and I'm learning a lot. Thank you so much for that comment. And then I have another one here. Somebody was talking about the wrong motives. I think much of these wrangles we are witnessing in marriages are as a result of wrong motives for getting married. People are getting into marriage for the wrong reasons. I believe God's purpose for marriage is purely companionship. Couples need to complement one another rather than to tolerate one another. I don't know what your response to this would be. This is from Kivuvi, listening in from Rongai, and he says he's loving the conversation.
Yeah, exactly what we were talking about when we said, why are you getting into this marriage? Is it to tick a box? So he's right in what he's saying. Sometimes we get in there with the wrong motives. You just want to say, I've ticked a box. Okay, the box of marriage is ticked. What next? Okay, so you're not there for the long haul. You're there just, either to just tick that box, see how it goes, and if it doesn't work for you, maybe you ship out. Okay, so I think people need to reevaluate when they're getting into marriage. Why am I getting into marriage? What is the purpose? Some of us get into marriage because perhaps we are saying we want to raise a family. Sometimes you get in there and you find that the children don't come as fast as you expected.
Very true.
So what happens? Unmet expectations. Okay, unmet expectations. We all get in there with our own expectations, and sometimes when those expectations are not met, it takes us to a bad place where you feel, was it even worth it?
Yes.
Why did I even get myself into this place? I should have just continued the way I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finally, as we wrap up, because we're almost out of time, for those relationships that are already in a place where they're separated, and you know one of them has to stay with the children, you know, how do you still continue to shield your children?
Okay.
Because now it's rather obvious you're not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah.
You know that your spouse is living in another home. You are in this home with your children. How do you still protect your children so that they don't get caught up in these murky waters that you're trying to sort out?
Okay, thank you. I think I would say find a way of communicating that works for you.
Yes.
Okay. There are some couples who are separated, but then they still find maybe once a month they connect to find out how the children are doing, what do they need to do, you know, moving forward, that kind of thing. You could find one spouse has already moved on to another relationship. Okay. So find what will work for you and protect the children. They are fragile. Model the right behavior to these children. Let them understand, yes, mommy and daddy are probably not together, but let them feel that love. Let them feel, because they could get to a place where they feel they were the cause of that.
Themselves,
they blame themselves, you see, and that presents other issues in the future. Yeah, so model. I strongly believe that in whichever situation you find yourself, you need to be the adult.
Yeah.
You need to model the right behavior, the desired behavior.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so that the children can also, even as they grow up, they don't give up on marriage just because where they're coming from, marriage didn't work. Doesn't mean marriage doesn't work.
Very true.
Okay.
Very true.
So modeling is actually very important. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your parting shot as we wrap up?
My parting shot would be, I'll look at marriage as a house, and I'd say in a house you have many bulbs. Okay. When some of those bulbs go off, you don't move from that house and go and rent another house. You replace the bulb.
Yeah.
You get another bulb.
Yes.
And you light up the house again. That's how marriage is. You've got to work at it. When you realize that one part, something is going, it's kind of deteriorating or kind of plateauing.
Yeah.
See what can you do? What bulb can you put in there to light up, the whatever. And also, as we're talking about modeling, I think I would want to say that we need to model the right behavior. And the Bible says that train up a child in the way he should grow. And when they grow, they will not depart from it.
Yes.
So that would be my parting shot.
Okay.
But you are the adult in the relationship.
Yes.
Be that adult.
Wow.
Yeah.
Finally, brethren, hapa ni studio, presenter ni Mluya, lazima utume salamu Christopher. Unatumia nani salamu?
Natuma salamu kwa familia yangu. Hapo Karen, my husband, Michael, my son Alvin, my daughter Lindiwe.
Wow.
I want to tell them that I love them.
Wow.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you so much for what you've shared with us today. I believe somebody has been helped.
For this and more of our shows, log on to www.familymediaonline.com to enjoy a wide variety of programs, from current affairs to testimonials and features, pastoral and inspirational shows, kids entertainment, and so much more. Also stream live on www.familymedia.tv.